What is the AI like to race against? Is the multiplayer any good? Does the title work in VR? Why is the DLC so expensive? These are some of the questions that I get asked every time we live stream Automobilista 2, and I think there is a lot of confusion as to what Automobilista 2 is about. So in this video, I'm going to answer those questions and some more to hopefully explain what Automobilista 2 is all about. So welcome back to the Game and Muscle YouTube channel. Preemptively like and subscribe, pull your hair out and you'll be bold like me. We have Automobilista 2 on the screen here, and I think the first thing to answer, the first thing to explain would be, what do you actually get in Automobilista 2, and how would you compare it to other titles? So I can give you so you have an idea of what you actually get with this relative to other things. And really, I think the simplest way to think of Automobilista 2 is if you were to imagine Project Cars 2 with cars and content that's in Automobilista 1, and if you haven't played Automobilista 1, I'm going to tell you what content's actually in this, but Project Cars 2 with cars and content from Automobilista 1 mixed with the sort of handling characteristics of something that's between Project Cars 2, Automobilista 1 and R Factor 2. That is kind of the overview of what you get with Automobilista 2. This is basically the Ryzen Studios, the developers of Automobilista 1 and 2. This is basically their new platform for all the content that they're going to be developing, if that makes sense. Now, in terms of the actual content that you get in Automobilista 2, we'll go to this the single player screen here where we can actually pick all the cars and stuff, and you'll see you've got a really good mix of different classes of car and, of course, different actual cars in those classes. An extreme mix, such an extreme mix that you've got stuff like lorries. Who doesn't want to race a lorry? Probably lorry drivers. They're probably bored of them. And then you know, all the way up from lorries, Formula cars, F3. You've got really random Brazilian cars, V8s. Basically, the way Ryzen tend to approach their car content in their simulators is it's from a race driver's perspective. So if you're looking for like really slow road cars, I mean, this does have front wheel drive slow road cars in it. You will get them. I mean, people do race them, but it's like if you're into race driving and you would like a wide range of race cars that handle differently and interestingly, then Automobilista 2 has you covered. Now, of the cars in this at the moment, some are definitely more polished and more rounded than others, and better than other cars in the game. Bearing in mind, at the making of this video, it is an early access title, so stuff has been improved, and from each week, actually, there's updates, and some cars have drastically changed from week to week. As it is right now, I personally find these P1, 2, 3 and 4 cars are by far the best cars in the simulator. From a raw driving perspective, they're the most fun cars, probably because I have a weird fetish towards Ocellas, Radical, MCR. It's that class of vehicle with the P4 and P3. P4 and P3, it's like Radical SR3, this is like a Radical SR8, and then you get into sort of pure prototype territory. I mean, technically they're all prototypes, but those are the most rounded and fun cars to drive in the sim at this point in time, from my personal preference of car handling and in my opinion. But, you know, in the long run, I think everyone's going to be covered. I mean, the Caterhams are amazing. Just ultimately, an absolutely fantastic selection of cars. If you like race cars and you like driving race cars, then Automobilista 2 basically has you covered. Now, in terms of the actual tracks and locations, I'll go through the track list here quickly, and it's worth bearing in mind this is the base version of the game here without any DLC or season stuff installed. This is what you get in the package that you'll buy for, I think it's like 25, 30 quid on Steam at this point in time. So we've got Adelaide, Azure, unlicensed Monaco. Don't tell anyone. Don't tell the Formula 1 licensing. Brands Hatch, Cadwell Park, Campo Grande, Cascavel, Caterpia, Cavello, Donington Park. I'm going to say these names wrong. I won't even pronounce them. I'll just go through them so you can see on the screen what's there. Just last week they added the new version of this. So what you'll notice is that they also have historic and new versions of tracks. But of this track selection, you'll notice there's a massive range of circuits, and I think what they've done much better in Automobilista 2 compared to the launch version of Automobilista 1 is that you do have crazy Brazilian tracks in there, which obviously if you're Brazilian, they're not crazy. The heritage of Ryzen is Brazilian driving simulators, by the way. That's why there's lots of Brazilian stuff in there. You've got those Brazilian tracks, which are mental from my perspective, but you also have, Brands Hatch, Dono, Oulton Park, and then some of the tracks that you'll know from Formula One European and American circuits, Virginia International Raceway, for example. All the different layouts there, and this is in the stock game. So you get an absolutely fantastic selection of tracks in this, and all of them are really, really nicely detailed. But I would definitely say at this point in time, at the making of this video, you do notice that some tracks have more detail than other tracks. I believe Brands Hatch, Cadwell Park, and Oulton Park are laser scanned, or if they're not laser scanned, they're very close to the laser scans in terms of the driving perception. If you were to compare them from other sims, which like ACC definitely has some laser scanned, iRacing obviously that has some laser scanned. They drive like laser scanned tracks, but some of the tracks in this are, I think they're more ported from their previous game, touched up a bit, and not as detailed. So, but as things progress, I think they will keep adding to it and building on it. So a massive selection of circuits, also old versions of circuits to go with the older cars, presumably. Absolutely fantastic. Let's put Donington here so we can do some driving while I was talking about the other aspects of this simulator. Where are you, Donington? There we go, East Midlands Airport, massive, represent. So we'll go with this P4 Duratec MRX. I say these are some of my favourite cars in the simulator. Before we actually drive it, you'll be familiar, as I say, this is the Madness game engine, so you get all the weather, day, night, time options and everything that you would get with Project Cars 2, that you'll be familiar with Project Cars 2. So let's get in there, and let's also, I'm trying to get through all the points here as quick as possible. It's really important to be clear that this isn't a pump and dump title. Reza are constantly adding stuff to this. This is very much a platform for Reza Studios, and they're looking at a 3 to 4 year development with this. If you've been following this from the beta to the early access to the Steam early access, it's actually changed hugely already in terms of force feedback changes. The graphics have slightly improved. They keep on adding features. They've added cars. They've added tracks. You don't think of this like the Formula 1 2019 title or Project Cars 2 or your average random game that comes out from a AAA studio where they release it and then or Dirt Rally where they release it and it's like, oh well, that's it. They keep adding stuff, and that's without season pass or anything. They still add stuff, add improvements, and very sizable improvements relative to other titles. So now we've got this car on the track at Donington. We'll talk about AI and single player, for those of you that had that question. So the single player at the moment in the early access, it doesn't really have a full single player in the sense of like a career mode, but it is something I think they're looking to have at the end of early access in the title. So and I would imagine it'd be more like a sort of championship type single player. I wouldn't expect a Toka race driver type single player. It'll be more of a, you do races, here's your results, carry it to the next race, and it's tracked through. Maybe something quite similar to how the Project Cars 2 single player worked, where you progress through it. But it's not really likely to have the whole sort of thing of, you're unlocking cars, you're unlocking some story, you're getting upgrades and those kind of things. It's not really about that. It could add that, but I really don't think the final version will. Automobilista 2 is very much more about the raw driving of the vehicles, and the individual racing, and also like racing those cars online and league racing and stuff. It's not really a full-on single-player game. But you'll see here, we are racing with the AI, and I will now talk about the quality of the AI at this point in time in early access. And really, what I would say is that the AI right now, you can drive against them, but they're really not that exciting to drive against. If you're familiar with the AI in R Factor 2 or Race Room Racing Experience, or maybe even like F1 2019, the AI in this are nowhere near as fun to drive against as those titles. You can race against them. If you leave a gap there, they will go past you. It will depend on the difficulty setting that you put them at in terms of how hard they are to race against. They're functional as it is right now on Earth, as it is in heaven. I don't know where that came from. As it is right now in the game at this point in time, the AI is functional. You can drive against them, but I'd say if you're sort of a moderately skilled sim racer, you're relatively fast. You probably won't find the AI as engaging as other titles. Again, I think it's going to be one of those things that's more of a longer-term improvement that will occur over time, like we found with Automobilista 1. Probably improved quite a bit by version 1.0 when it comes out of early access, but I'd expect it to be another 6 months before the AI is as compelling as, say, Race Room, F1 2019 or R Factor 2. I definitely find R Factor 2 has the best AI out of the current simulators when you set it up correctly, in terms of a challenge for if you're moderately fast. Handling. Let's talk about the handling. So, the actual dynamics of the vehicles. Oh, we've got a bit of fog rolling in here. We've got a bit of weather. So, if you're to compare the handling of the game, it's a strange one. Again, it's kind of like without playing this, obviously you could just buy this and try it for 2 hours on Steam and send it back if you don't like it. That's probably the best way to decide for yourself if you like it or not. But if I was going to compare it between driving simulators, for those of you that want some kind of framing for this, I would say that it is like a weird mix between Automobilista, R Factor 2 and Project Cars 2, in that the force feedback and the general movement of the car, like grip levels and fluidity of the vehicles, and the nature and the general approach to the driving is closer to R Factor 2 and Automobilista 1 than it is Project Cars 2. But then there are aspects to the Project Cars 2 handling and underlying tyre model. I believe this is using a sort of tweaked version of the Project Cars 2 setter tyre model. They might be using other ones, but you do have that rotational quality in terms of the cars do tend to rotate more on the centre than what you find in G-motor-based games, or what you find in Race Room or even R Factor 2. And you definitely find in this that you want to get on the throttle earlier than you might want to in Assetto Corsa, for example, or ACC. Like, when you get on the throttle, it really does have a lot of push to get it through the corner, which is very much a Project Cars 2 thing. But you have to modulate the throttle because the car rotates quite easily. The cars are very sensitive to throttle input and that rotation, which takes a little bit of getting used to. But with the cars like this, that have a little bit of downforce and they're nicely balanced, and also a lot of the road cars, I wouldn't say it's an issue, but I think with some of the Formula cars and some of the less developed cars in Automobilista 2, it does feel like you're getting more in that Project Cars 2. This is a little bit too snappy territory in a rotational snappy sense, not in an input sense. But the end drive is really enjoyable, I find. It's like, if you're going to compare it to something like the F1 2019 games or GT Sport or even ACC, raw enjoyment of the handling is absolutely fantastic. Like, you really do feel in control of the cars. They're really nimble. All the track details come through. It's just enjoyable. It's just enjoyable to drive, and for me, that's the main thing that matters. It's all about the raw enjoyment of the driving. If you feel like you're in control of the car, if the car responds to your inputs, the accelerator, the brake, the steering, what more do you want? That's the point of playing a driving game, basically, or driving simulator. Well, that's one of the points at least. But that's the point that makes it enjoyable for me. Let's go to a P3. Select that. We'll do another track and keep talking. We'll move to talking about the force feedback. Let's go to let's do Alton Park here. Oh, Gamer Muscle, you're always driving the same bloody tracks. Well, yes, if you're talking and driving, it helps to be driving the same tracks, because it's very hard to talk and drive at the same time without piling into people and other cars. Let's put a few more laps on here. You notice the actual UI on this is relatively clear to use, relatively easy to understand. I wouldn't say, I think the flow of the UI in Project Cars 2 is actually better than Automobilista 2, but this is fine once you're aware of how it operates. It's easy to learn, and it's got the functionality there, unlike some of the other UIs on the market at this point in time. Factor 2. So sorry, Studio 397. I do like aspects of Factor 2, but yeah, we won't talk about the UI there. I want to turn the difficulty up though of the opponents. So let's do that. They're on super easy mode. Let's put them on like 80 for now. I'm putting this on. Let's go there. See what they do. 15 opponents. Right, there we go. Alton Park. We could change the weather as well. I want some sunshine. Well, medium cloud to sunshine, and let's start it. Yeah, whatever, that'll do. Confirmed. Off we go. So, from the handling, we'll move to the force feedback. And because that's a big question people ask. And in the versions of the force feedback has changed dramatically as this has progressed through early access, like so much so that the launch version of force feedback is incomparable to the latest version. It's the force feedback's actually a little bit calmer, a little bit closer to R Factor 2 force feedback and communication. And I think they've done a really good job with this, in that I can tell from the force feedback that it's very... I'd imagine it would work very well on a wide variety of wheels. I mean, of course, I'm spoilt, and I'm really lucky that I'm using a direct drive wheel here. I'm using a FANATEC DD1, which, you're going to get good force... Well, you're going to feel the game's force feedback regardless of what the game is. But, as someone that used a G25 for 5 years, a T300 for 2 years, a TSPC Racer for a year... I know that different simulators play better and worse with different wheels, and I think the force feedback in this, you should be able to set it up to feel pretty decent regardless of the wheel that you've got. And they've got different profiles in there, so you can dial it in and make adjustments and what have you, depending on your own preference. But from the DD, from using the DD and talking about the innate force feedback that comes from the game, what you do get in this is a really good feeling for the front tyres of the vehicles, especially with the P cars in this, P1 to 4, and the more polished vehicles. So you can really feel that sort of load on the tyres mid-corner as you're going through the corners. You can really feel the variation in load on the front tyres to know if you've got the grip going through faster corners or if the car's going to give out. You have really good force feedback for the... rear of the vehicle when you're turning it in, and so the tendency for the back of the car to want to come out on the mass, or when you throw the car, you get good rear end there to know that I've got to be careful on the throttle because the rear end's coming out, especially on the throttle. On braking as well, if the back pops out on braking, you get the force feedback, but you don't get much force feedback for a sort of loading on the braking. So when you're trail braking, There's not much variation in the force feedback to let you know how much you can trail brake before the rear tyres are going to give out. So I say that aspect of the force feedback's lacking. So it's kind of like, I'd say in terms of communicating the forces that you need to, if you drive from force feedback such as I do, it has most of the forces there other than for the braking forces and that lead in for the braking, but all the front end forces and getting on the power out of a corner is all nicely done. In terms of the sort of immersive force feedback, like the actual suspension compression, track texture, and like curbing and engine vibrations and all that kind of stuff, absolutely fantastic. It does all that as you would want it to. I mean, you can use the FX slider in this to increase or decrease those kind of effects, like engine vibration and rumbles and track details and things. Personally, I like to just turn all that off because as I say, I drive from the force feedback, so I just want to feel like what the tyres are doing through the corners to help me know how much I can push and or if I need to dial things back a bit. But again, I think most people on most wheels will be able to get the force feedback in this to feel really good for them, bar the braking and feeling how hard you can trail brake, which definitely was a problem with Project Cars 2. So as I say, it's interesting that there are aspects in this that are similar to Project Cars 2 in that regard. Though, unlike Project Cars 2, if you are too heavy on the brakes, the cars don't seem to wildly slop around as much. The tyres, I think, maybe it's just lower grip levels in general or whatever they've done. The tyre curves on this are more forgiving, and as a result, I think that also makes the force feedback less attacking, less jumpy. So the force feedback feels more tame than Project Cars 2, for example. So again, if you were gonna place the force feedback on a scale between different sims, I would say it's kind of like a bizarre mix between Automobilista, Project Cars 2, and sort of R Factory 2 direction. I'd say there's more innate detail in this through the force feedback than, say, Race Room Racing experience. But in totality, I don't find the force feedback as precise or as covering as many aspects of force feedback that you get from Assetto Corsa. But compared to Assetto Corsa Competizione and iRacing, the force feedback's on another level in this. So, make of that as you will. In totality, across all the simulators, I would describe the force feedback in this version of the game as being more than good enough, and certainly very enjoyable, and probably very good on most wheels that you get on the market. So, I mean, there's room for improvement, but still a bit of a slopping around here. So I give it a muscle thumbs up for the force feedback, other than for the braking aspect. Who knows how things will change. Giving it a bit of a flop here. See, interestingly, this car does not rotate on its centre. This car actually drives much more in line with cars that you find in Automobilista. So a bit of a plough, sideways lateral plough through that. I mean, you can hear the sound as well. I think they've done a really good job with the audio in this. Most of the cars sound really nice. Some of them do have a little bit of audio clipping, but I think that might be to do with the fact that those vehicles possibly need, they're not fully polished yet. This car sounds absolutely fantastic. The tyre scrub sounds absolutely, very nice variation to the tyre scrub sound to let you know how much you're pushing the wheels, but it's not overdone. Curbing's really nice. Those of you that play Race Room Racing experience will be pleased to know that the curbing on this does not sound like an attack helicopter. I quite like the attack helicopter in curbing in Race Room Racing experience. It really gets me that Vietnam experience whilst driving cars, but really nice curbing sound. Let's go on the grass. I mean, that sounds more like snow than grass, but who am I to judge the sound of grass in a race car? Because I have no idea what grass sounds like when driving over it in a race car. Something I've never experienced and have no real expectation as to what it would sound like. Now, another question I keep getting asked: how good is the VR in this? And simply put, if you've tried Project Cars 2, then the VR in this is basically the same as Project Cars 2. You will notice the only real difference is I found this on some tracks performs better than Project Cars 2, and other tracks slightly worse. But you know, the VR in this is sort of in that Assetto Corsa with mods kind of performance of VR in terms of raw frame rate. Infinitely better than Assetto Corsa Competizione VR. You know, for example, on my 2D screen here, we're getting like 100 FPS max settings on everything, which means on on like the Valve Index, with these settings, I'd expect to get about 60 or 70 FPS. So I'd have to turn the graphics down a little bit. When I've played this with the Rift S, it hits the 80 FPS perfectly fine, only slowing down when there's loads of cars at the start of the race. The one thing you will notice in VR with Automobilista 2, and this will be the case in later versions of the game, is that the game uses billboard trees. So if you look at the trees, they're actually like flat planes, or sprites, I guess, that rotate to always face you, to give the illusion of them being three-dimensional trees. Personally, I think they look fantastic. I actually prefer these trees to the Project Cars 2 trees, which are actual 3D trees. But a downside of billboard trees is that in VR, if you look to the side of your vision as you're going past them, sometimes the trees look a bit wonky-donk. These trees work a lot better in 2D than they do 3D. Something you'll notice. I probably ruined it for you if you hadn't noticed it. You can get used to it. It's just a little bit funky. It's like you've had some mushrooms before getting in your race car. It doesn't ruin the game, but it is. I would say it's something to be aware of. It's stuff like this. You go past this kind of tree here in VR, you'll be like, hang on, why is that tree flying over me? Don't worry. Just imagine you've simulated a race car whilst after eating the wrong sort of mushrooms. So, yeah, the VR, I'd say, is absolutely fantastic in this. You know, you get to... the car details are great, the track details are great, and it runs fine in VR. All the weather, all the lighting. Very similar, as I say, to Project Cars 2 in that regard. Right. That's most of the main points. Do you know what? I've totally abandoned this race. Game of Muscle, what are you doing? I'm gonna drive to the end of the track here. I absolutely love these cars. What I haven't talked about is multiplayer. We're almost there, though, guys. We're almost there. I will bring up multiplayer. Let's go across the finish line and quit out. I don't know why. I mean, there's no need to, but it just felt like the right thing to do. So, of course, you've got replays and stuff, very similar to what you'd expect in most driving sims. So, multiplayer, when it comes to multiplayer in this, the last update they did at the making of this video, they actually fixed the netcode now, so you can do close online racing. I wouldn't say it's completely perfect. It's very similar, the netcode and multiplayer, to what you'd experience in Project Cars 2, where sometimes the cars can get a little, when you contact people, they can stick a little bit to each other. And there's, you know, sometimes someone will have a contact in front of their car, will like launch in the air, but then it will settle back down because the server was sort of doing some prediction and stuff. But on a functional level now, the multiplayer is more than good enough to have really compelling, fun, close online racing, just from a functional level. They are going to add a sort of ranking type system, again very similar, I'd imagine, to Project Cars 2. I don't know if they're going to do more with that. That's yet to be seen. But you can create your own lobbies and just invite people to them. A really nice feature for multiplayer, which is something you don't get in many other simulators, is that you can fill with AI. And so you could set your human opponents to, like, if you want to you don't have any friends. You would just have one human opponent, and you might as well just race single player. No friends. But if you have, like, 2 friends, you're lucky. Or maybe you have 3 friends. Maybe you have 4. Maybe you have 5. Who knows? If you have friends, you could set human opponents. You can invite them in, and then you can have AI, and then you can race against the AI with your friends. So you get to do that enjoyable aspect of beating the AI and beating your friends, and then everyone is beating themselves. Yeah, we won't go there. So you can. That's a really nice feature. I think that's in R Factor 2 as well, and it was in R Factor 1. It's a bit of sim heritage going across titles here. It's very. It's very incestuous when it comes to driving sim engines. But you can set identical fields or same class. You can very quickly just create your own host, name it, and then set a password. And you can host from the simulator itself, and then people can just join that through the list with the password. Really nice, and the servers actually work really nicely. Like, as you know, if you watch this channel, we do a lot of community racing. Where I just set up a server, people join in and race, and it's actually, it's a really good way to go through different content and just have fun racing. And to me, personally, that is one of the biggest aspects of both Project Cars 2 and Automobilista 2, is just that functionality for the multiplayer. It's like getting nice cars, nice graphics, nice VR, it's there, it's all in a package, it just works. Create a multiplayer lobby, get driving. It's normal in other games. It's totally normal in other games, but when it comes to simulators, apparently that's like a miracle on the mount. He's turning water into wine, or in my case, water into non-alcoholic beer. So that's the multiplayer. As you can see, we've got in the menu, we've got the championship stuff, which is grayed out. That'll be part of the sort of single player thing that I was talking about earlier. There is a time trial mode in this, which I forgot to mention, where you can obviously set times and race against people. I'm just not interested in that. But if you want to brush up on your speed and everything, that could be quite interesting. See how you compare to others. Measure your EPEAN. That is about it for the sort of core game features. What I would say, though, is the biggest thing, I probably should have said this earlier in the video, one thing that people are really confused about is the pricing of this title. And it's understandable. It really is understandable. Let's go to continue here. It's really understandable that the pricing is confusing. Let's make them easy so I can talk and drive this car. So, you've got the base game there for like 30 quid or so, which is great. Good job, Reza. Top notch there. But then the season pass is not like, well, you can buy the base game and the season pass together for like £95. I think the season pass on its own is like 70 or something. And the thing is, it's like, that makes it looks really bad. You're like, hang on, why would I bother paying that to get it? Like, you look at other season passes for other titles, you're like, that's a rip-off. You'd be like, that's just stupid. Like, why is this game so expensive? The thing is that in that season pass, you are actually getting, it's like 2 years of content, and it's actually it's listed on their forum. It's actually a lot of content in that season pass in terms of new cars and tracks. It's way more content than you get from a typical season pass with most titles. So from a raw pricing perspective, it's a lot of money up front. I think it's just mental. It's a really stupid way of doing it. The reason I think that they've gone with the pricing for the season pass is because if you were a Reza backer, like part of the weird Reza fanboy club, you could buy into the game for like 90 quid before anyone knew any of the details of Automobilista 2. And so that people paid 90 quid for it to get the complete package. And then Reza probably don't want to piss off those users by going, oh, look, people that just bought it on Steam who didn't care and didn't support us can just get it for a lot cheaper. So I understand that, but the result is the mass market that then approaching this, and this game actually has quite a wide appeal to it, looking at the DLC going, oh, hang on, I'm not going to buy the basic game if all the DLC costs this much. So they have kind of shot themselves in the foot with that, unfortunately. But I would say you're not getting bad value for money if you do buy it. And the actual, I would kind of just ignore that season pass, to be honest, from your average user's perspective. I'm just testing the off-road here. I would ignore this season pass, and I would just look at it as like, I'll get the base game. There's a ton of content in the base game. They will still probably add cars and other stuff to the base game, regardless of the season pass. And then as new content comes out, those if they do individual DLCs, which I think they probably will do, it'd be stupid not to. You just get them at a cheaper price as and when they come out, or just wait for a sale and pick stuff up in a sale. You know, I mean, for me personally, what I'd really like to have seen is for Reza to actually just go, forget the fans. Forget the fans. Who cares about the fans? Throw the fans in the bin. I'd just like to have as many people as possible to race against online, and you know, make this season DLC, make the whole thing cost like 50 quid or something, and as a result, get a lot more sales, a lot more people in the game. It makes it better for everyone, at the expense of pissing off your fans that bought into it early. Because really, I mean, I bought into this early on. I'm a Reza fanboy. From a perspective of a player that's already bought into it and is playing it, you want more people to be playing the game. You want it to be an active title. Sure, you might feel a bit bitter that you spent more than other people, but you won't feel bitter if you've got more people playing the game and you can enjoy playing those games with more people. It's more active and a more successful title, and the developers made more money as a result of it being a more successful title. You know what I mean? So yeah, it's really is a shame that sort of £90 or £75 DLC plus core game price. As I say, my advice: just buy the basic version of the game. Maybe wait for DLC to come out on sale bit by bit in the long run. This car's ridiculous. Look at the clouds and so again, the graphics and details in this absolutely gorgeous. Really nice subtle lighting, really nice shading. Birds flying in the sky there. Game of muscle missing the break point. Pure driving emotion. Oh! Ah! Yeah, the AI aggression slider works. Look at that. They've got a lot. I'll put the difficulty up. The AI aggression slider up, and they're wrestling me. Nice. You really have to nail the break point on this track. I mean, also, if you get, like, when it comes to the pricing of this, I think you actually do, you get a lot for the cost of the game. Just a sheer amount of circuits, tracks, and for me personally, I'm really, really enjoying this. I'm really enjoying how much it's improved from launch. I really like developers that don't pump and dump. That keep working on the titles, keep improving them. And if you played Automobilista 1, they were working on that for like 4 or 5 years with really significant updates constantly coming to it. Look at that. Look at the movement of the car in front as it goes over the bumps. as our underbody grazes on the floor. Oh, left braking a bit late there. It's only a 5-lap sprint. So ultimately, what I would say is there's generally sim titles where there's certain sim titles where I say you basically just have to have them in your collection. If you're like a sim fan, I mean, if you've got to the point where you're buying, like, if you've got a sim rig, a dedicated sim rig, well, you know, there's games where it's like Assetto Corsa Competizione, iRacing, Race Room, R Factor 2, Assetto Corsa 1 with Content Manager and mods. I'm going to have missed some titles out here. Sorry, fanboys of those user bases. Dirt Rally, 1 and 2, WRC 8. There's Wreckfest. Those titles are ones that you just owe it to yourself to have. Like, there's a certain threshold of quality, and then a sim passes that, and then you should have it. And I would say, got to be gentle on that old throttle. I would say Automobilista 2 is definitely one of those titles that you have to add to your collection, even as it is now. And that's why I'm making this video at this point, despite the game still being in early access. I totally missed the break point again. Oh no, we got it. It's close. Since the last update that fixed the netcode and also aspects of the force feedback, this is now at a point, even now in early access, where I would say it's a game that you owe it to yourself to put in your collection. Gamer Muscle, Reza affiliate link underneath the video. Damn it! I don't have an Automobilista 2 affiliate link. Why? Reza, Renato, where's it? Check in the post. They've already bribed me, guys. They've been sending me supermodels from Brazil. If you're wondering why I liked Automobilista 2, it's not anything to do with the actual simulator. You'll notice we've been hyping it before it came out. I've got like 6 Brazilian beach babes locked in my basement cupboard. If you listen very closely, you can hear them. Let me out to the cupboard. That's how Brazilians talk. Brazilian beach babes talk like that, for sure. But yeah, I'm really happy with this, with the way this title's gone, moving, improved. Come on, we've got what I'm gonna do. We've got to finish this race. I've not missed anything else. No. I think we've covered all the key questions. I had my little mobile phone on my sim rig with a list of the questions that are being asked. No doubt we've missed something. Gamer Muscle, you didn't talk about this one specific thing that only 2 people wanted to know about. Sorry. Sorry. This is practically a review video. This is basically a review video. Oh dear. I don't know what I'm doing on YouTube, guys. I just make up as I go along. It's the best way to do life. Came here for an Automobilista review. Get philosophical answers. I mean, with this final lap, I mean, it is a good time for me to reiterate. It's a perfect opportunity for those of you that enjoyed this and wasted your life watching this to subscribe. The subscribe will pop up on the screen at the end of the video, and hit the like button. I'll remind you again in a minute's time. YouTube is powered by annoying button clicks. Oh no! Ooh, grip came back there. So that's nice as well with Automobilista 2. Unlike iRacing, if you go over the limit or you lock up, you still have some grip to play with or some control to play with. You back off, you don't just snowplow for 1.5 seconds. You actually have some something to go for. I think the AI is doing a really good job here. They're battling against each other. Definitely at the moment seems that the AI is better or worse with different cars and different tracks. Oh no! I mean, this is a fantastic car. I just love these types of vehicles. There we go. There it is. Look at that. Look at all that grass, guys. What's better than a grass and race cars? So, yeah. I hope you enjoyed that, guys. I hope that really filled in all the gaps for those of you that had all those questions. I'm sure I'll be asked again in any live stream that we do with this. But I'll just direct everyone to this video. So I've saved myself time, I've wasted your time, and everyone's slightly more depressed than they were before they started watching this. So click that like button. As I told you, I'd remind you. Click the like button, subscribe, and I will see you very soon in the next Game of Muscle live stream or the next Game of Muscle video. Thanks for watching, and goodbye, everyone.